I've been wrestling all week whether I ought to tell this or not. I feel probably I shouldn't, but yet it is such a graphic picture of the sermon tonight. The illustration is so beautiful. I'm going to, and I'll be sorry after I did. It's almost like taking someone along on the honeymoon to tell you something as that goes on along this line, but I think I must. We had our graduation, and I may have mentioned some of this somewhere, but I doubt it. We had our graduation exercises for our high school here a few weeks ago, the 4th annual graduation service. I had some folks who had to see me, and I made some appointments after graduation. I guess the graduation wasn't over till 10:15. It must have been 10:30 or 10:45 before I got back to my office, and I had several people that needed to see me after I got back to the office. About 11:15, I guess, I was counseling with a young lady with whom I had an appointment. And someone knocked on the door of my study. I went to the door, and I hope you won't mind me telling this. I saw David Hyles. I'd never seen David cry like he was crying. His face was completely disfigured, and if you had turned on a water faucet, you would not have a dripping water faucet could not have made a bigger puddle on the floor than David's tears were making. And I've known David over 20 years. I've seen him cry a few times, but I've never seen him cry like that. He was completely beside himself. I could think of a million things that must be wrong. And I said, "Son, what's wrong?" And he said, "Dad, I've got to see you." Well, I said, "Son, I have an appointment." He said, "Please, Dad, just see me a minute or two." And I told the little lady who was in my office, I said, "Would you wait, please?" I thought something terrible had happened. Some tragedy had happened. And I went over to Mrs. McKinney's office, unlocked the door, and I said, "Come in here, son." And now Dave and I, we don't Gucci-goo a great deal. We've never been Gucci-gooers. We Gucci some, we never goo. And, anyway, we just never have. And, the way we express our love is hit in the stomach or a knee in the groin or a kick in the pants or a slap across the head, And we may meet in the hall somewhere and I'll trip him and he'll fall on his face, and that's "I love you" in man language. And, you fellows didn't recognize what I've been saying to you all these years, did you? But, anyway, not once a year is there a hug or an embrace. I think that's about enough for a father and a son. I don't think it's enough for a mother and a son, but I think it's enough for a father and a son. And, but he was absolutely beside himself. And I said, "Son, what is it?" And he said, "Dad, those kids have just graduated." And I said, What about it?" He said, "Dad, I was their youth director." And I said, "I know it. What's bad about that? They ought to be crying, you know." He said, "Dad, I don't have them anymore. They're gone." He said, "Dad, I love those kids." He said, "I've been mean, and all of them don't love me, but I love those kids." He said, "Dad, I don't have them anymore." He said, "It turned out right." He said, "I'm not their youth director anymore." And he cried, and he cried, and he cried. And then he said, that's all, Dad." And I said, "Son, that's not all. Why did you come?" And he said, "Dad, I just felt like I had to talk to somebody who could love me as much as I love them. He said, Dad, I knew you'd understand. You're a leader. He said, I won't do this anymore. Maybe. But it just felt like I had to talk to somebody who loves me as much as I love them. And I thought of that day in East Texas in the pine thicket when I first hurt like that 25 years ago. Well, for the first time in my life, somebody turned on me who was in my church. And the Lord knows this is true. He knows it's true. He knows tonight as best I can, I love Him. And He knows tonight as best I can, I'm trying to serve Him. He knows I'm full of mistakes, and prone to being sometimes a little quick on the draw, a little stubborn. You don't know that, but the Lord knows it. But He knows my heart. And I recall when I went out behind the church to a little pine thicket 25 years ago as a kid preacher. And I said, Lord, I loved him. Why did he turn on me? I loved him. A man that I loved like I love my own life, and whom I had complete confidence, turned on me. And I recall how I felt that night when I first learned that the leader has a love that is unique to leadership. No one knows what it's like until he leads people and is misunderstood. A leader's never... Brother Lester Roloff said one time, he said, Brother Jack, he said, you'll always be 25 years ahead of your generation. Now, I'm not sure that's true, but nobody ever knows how a leader feels and how much he loves until he becomes a leader. I was in the office last night counseling a young lady. I won't call her name. Maybe 2 or 3 will know who she is. Very fine young lady. She's had some troubles and trials. She's attempted suicide a few times. It looked like for a while we just gave up on her. I mean, all of us, her family, we just all but gave up on her. And finally one night in desperation, I said, okay, I'll just see her, whether I can't have time or not, I'll just see her. And I've seen her and seen her and seen her and seen her. For years, several years now, I've counseled and counseled. And I've just seen sometimes just a little growth and feel like I'm doing just a little good and then just, it looked like that it was hopeless. And then I'd see a little hope and then hopeless again. And then I'd see a little hope. And last night she was talking to me and she said, Preacher, I want you to know I love you. And I said, I love you too. You're one of my kids. And she said, Preacher, why do you love us so much? Why do you love us so much? She said, why would you take a person like me, all the meanness I've done, all the trouble I've caused you? Why would you keep on seeing me and keep on seeing me and keep on seeing me? You just sort of have to ask the mother who loves the wayward son, whose love is not returned. Or the father who grieves over the daughter who's gone astray, whose love is not returned. Did you know true love need not be returned to exist? True love is in the breast of the lover, not in the actions of the object. Love never faileth. Love never faileth. And I got thinking, and I've thought so often lately about this. Mrs. John R. Rice, God bless her. She cornered me one day and she said, Dr. Hyles, I want to tell you how much I appreciate what you meant to my husband. She called him John R. Now you better not do that. You have a full-page ad blasting you in the sword of the Lord. But she calls him John R. She said, I appreciate it. She said, Dr. Hyles, do you know what you mean to John R.? And I said, no. She said, John R. is lonely at the top. Lonely at the top. That was the problem with David that night. He was lonely at the top. Misunderstood. His love sometimes misunderstood.